Trump fires back at impeachment, a nasty fight over a gender transition case for a 7-year-old, plus Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wins re-election, and more rich people in China than America. That and more coming up.
I think they're lousy politicians. But two things they have. They're vicious, and they stick together. They don't have Mitt Romney in their midst. They don't have people like that. They stick together. You never see them break off. He knew all about the whistleblower. Why didn't he say? He's a crooked politician. Very bad for our country. This whole thing is very bad for our country. In the midst of that, I'm trying to get out of wars. And we may have to get in wars, too. Okay? We may have to get in wars. We're better prepared than we've ever been. If Iran does something, they'll be hit like they've never been hit before. I mean, we have things that we're looking at. But can you imagine? I have to fight off these lowlifes. At the same time, I'm negotiating these very important things that should have been done during Obama and Bush and even before that. All right? So that's where we are right now.
Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show. President Trump in a press conference yesterday, that was classic Trump, pulling no punches, holding back not at all. It sounded a little bit there like he went from talking about Romney being a fifth column in the Republican Party, essentially, to knowing about the whistleblower. The whistleblower thing was Adam Schiff, just to be clear. So he's saying on the one side of it, that was a little bit unclear from the way we set up that intro there, but from the one side, you have Romney, who's supposed to be on Trump's team to do important things for the Republican Party and for the United States. That's what you would expect from a Republican senator when you have a Republican president. And there's no question that many of the things that Trump has done are right in line with traditional GOP platform, traditional GOP goals. And yet Mitt Romney spends most of his time, it seems, just taking cheap shots at the president, talking about the president's character. And what's amazing is, does Mitt really think that he's the only one that knows that President Trump has personal and character flaws? I always think there's a degree of not just haughtiness, there's an arrogance, really, to some of the NeverTrump cabal in thinking that we don't recognize that people that support the president's agenda are not aware that he has had an imperfect past. And I don't want to cast too many aspersions because I think a lot of people have imperfect pasts. I mean, we found out that Mitt Romney thinks that he should run around on Twitter as Pierre Delecto. Oh, and don't worry, we will get to Monsieur Trudeau winning re-election today or last night. We'll get to that. What a slap in the face to sanity that was. That's right, Justin Trudeau, part deux. But Trump is tired of having to fight battles that Democrats never do on their own side. Yeah, sure, there are disputes and there's pushback internally, but Democrats always keep their squabbles in the family, in-house. No prominent Democrat ever went against Barack Obama. Certainly no Democrats were trying to destroy the Obama presidency. That would have been unthinkable. And Trump has to do that. And then he also has to deal with Shifty Schiff and this whole impeachment farce. You know, there's this new CNN poll. Among Republicans, 6% say they support impeaching and removing the Republican president, also known as NeverTrumpers. So almost, let's say 94%, give or take a couple of points, of the Republican Party is like, this is crazy. But there's still that contingent. I can guarantee you that if you looked back at the Obama administration, there was never a point at which 5% of Democrats wanted to remove him from office. Now, I know the Democrats would say, oh, it's because Obama never did anything bad. Really? We need to go over all of that? Now, I would say that President Obama really did exceed his authority and broke down separation of powers laid out by the Constitution, but those were political questions. My opposition, and I'm sure for those of you watching or listening, your political opposition to Obama was rooted in policy. It was not an effort to take the system and contort it and weaponize it to get something political that I could not get through the electoral process, which is all the Democrats are doing here. This is the kitchen sink approach. Let's impeach him after the special counsel. The special counsel wasn't enough in terms of its findings to impeach him, and now we have to deal with this. So I understand the president's frustration. I understand why he's looking around saying, you have more people in the country right now who are employed than at any time, I believe, in the history of this country. Now, oh yeah, here we go. Can we play, please, clip 24? Here's the president saying it.
African American, Hispanic, Asian American have all set records, the lowest unemployment in the history of our country, not just like for 50 years. We have 51 years for the country, and we're going to end up topping that number pretty soon. That'll be historic, too, very soon. If we keep going the way we're doing, I think we will, because the household income is so incredible, the median household income. But if you look, African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, in the history of our country, they have the best unemployment numbers and they have the best employment numbers. Today, it was announced that we have the most people working in the history of our country, almost 160 million people. How do you beat me in a debate on those numbers?
The answer is this whole impeachment circus. The answer is create a perception among the electorate that what's really happening in the country, what the government is doing, and just as importantly, in fact, in many ways, more importantly, what the government is not doing, those should not be the deciding factors in voting decisions. It's what the media, the establishment, the left-wing Democrat progressive apparatus tells you about this president. And no level of exaggeration is too much. No hysterical shrieks from Congress all the way across the newsrooms of the major outlets across the country and different cable channels in Hollywood. They can say the craziest stuff imaginable. The president's a traitor, the president's a Nazi, the president's a white nationalist, all of these things. Without evidence, as I like to borrow their phrase, without evidence. And we're supposed to think that they have better judgment and would do a better job running the country. Well, there's even some concern among Democrats that's emerging right now that they don't have a front runner worthy of the name. Who's been saying that all along? Yeah, Joe Biden's not inspiring the masses. What a shock. But we'll get into the possibility of new entrants, including, of course, hello! She's never going away. I keep telling you, she's never, ever going away. She will haunt your dreams, America. She's never leaving. But Trump also, in his fighting back, no surprise here, has given the Democrats something else to work with. So he tweeted today, and this has caused a firestorm this morning. I mean, Trump tweets can direct an entire news cycle. It's pretty astonishing. This is what he wrote. So someday if a Democrat becomes president and the Republicans win the House, even by a tiny margin, they can impeach the president without due process or fairness or any legal rights. All Republicans must remember what they are witnessing here, a lynching, but we will win. That was what the president tweeted. And of course, this is being used as an opportunity to say the president is out of touch, is a racist, is terrible because he used the term lynching. Now, this is where I say, I know enough about how this president operates that he's not looking to obey the dictates of the left on language. We all know that. But I also feel like his point here is getting now all chewed up and lost because of the choice of this one word, which I think he had to know would set people off. I also think, however, at least it's clear to me, that the President of the United States uses certain words sometimes because he is told not to. That he enjoys being told, sorry, you can't do that, and then saying, I'm going to do it anyway. I think there's a defiance in him, which often is a useful thing for this president because he won't obey the conventional wisdom. But sometimes you have a situation like today where now we're going to have an all day long discourse on whether or not the president or anyone should be able to use the term lynching in this manner. Now, some of you are saying, Buck, what about Justice Clarence Thomas referring to a high-tech lynching during his confirmation battle? Another vicious Democrat attempt to undermine an eminently decent and qualified human being for the post that he had. And the response, as you know, is going to be, well, Clarence Thomas is black. There are many on the left who claim that Clarence Thomas has turned his back on the black community just because he is a conservative. That's also part of the Democrat talking points. But now everyone's going to focus in on Trump and the impeachment situation and specifically the usage of this word. Lindsey Graham, however, agrees with Trump calling the impeachment process a lynching. He says, quote, "This is a lynching in every sense. This is un-American." So Lindsey Graham is backing him up on this. You know, you never know what you're going to get with Lindsey Graham. Sometimes he decides to man the bulwark alongside Trump. Sometimes he just wants to invade another country. You don't really know which Lindsey Graham is going to show up on any given day. Now we could have this discussion over the fact that lynching, which is primarily affected and was a horrible part of American history, primarily affected African Americans in the South, but lynching actually was not exclusively used as an extrajudicial murder tool against African Americans in the South. It was also used in other cases in other places. But once again, the media finds an opportunity to distract or to push the conversation away from the core point here, which is that the country, by the numbers, is doing incredibly well. The things that are supposed to matter, the economy. Trump has even managed to calm things down at the southern border, despite all of the objections and all the different stuff that Democrats have done, the hashtag resistance judiciary. He is doing a lot that is of benefit to the American people. Household income now adjusted for inflation. I think I saw today it's 57,000 is now what it is adjusted for inflation compared to what it was under the Clinton administration when it was in the 40s. So household income is way up. I mean, there's so much to actually celebrate in the Trump presidency. Instead, what do we have? Impeach him, imprison him, investigate his family members. This is toxic to politics. This is toxic to our ability to have discussions as adults across the country. And one of the most galling aspects of it all is that the very people that are pushing this toxicity, the left-wing Democrats, claim to be the ones defending our sacred institutions. They claim to be the ones that care about fairness and decency in political debates. They are delusional, my friends, but that is what Trump derangement syndrome does.
It would have been great. But the Democrats went crazy. Even though I would have done it free, saved the country a lot of money. Then they say, oh, but you'll get promotion. Yes. You don't think I get enough promotion? I get more promotion than any human being that's ever lived. I think I get. I think I would have that. I think I can say that fairly safe.
It's another part of this that you don't hear much about. We're always being told that the president is trying to enhance his brand and enrich himself. And the president is already a billionaire. And the president is already, at this point, I think you could argue, the most famous person on earth. I mean, maybe there's some study that shows that it's, I don't know, maybe it's Barack Obama, maybe it's Michael Jordan or LeBron James or some sports superstar. I don't know. Cristiano Ronaldo, for those of you that watch soccer, which is probably very few of you, maybe there's someone who's more recognizable, but I don't think at this stage of the game, President Trump, what is he, 72 years old? He really is that concerned with burnishing the brand even more than he already has. But you can't make that argument because they'll just say Trump is greedy and he's not as rich as he says he is. And to this, I just point out, they've always been unwilling to look at anything Trump does the way a normal person would look at it. This is what the emoluments clause argument, which they're bringing up once again in the G7 Doral. Do we call it Doralgate? I don't think it's nearly important enough for that. But the G7 being hosted next year at Doral, everyone's saying, well, this is another emoluments clause. This is just shows you they go digging in the law books for something, or they go digging in the Constitution, wherever it is. They go digging into statutes to try to find something that they can claim the president is doing that is a violation of them. I mean, they'll stretch them desperately. The perfect example, this was the Logan Act violation that was used as the pretext to throw General Flynn in prison and to ruin his career and almost, if not successfully or entirely, bankrupt him. But, President Trump doesn't get credit for a lot of the things that he does do. For a guy who's so concerned with money, for example, I mean, he pointed out, and look, I'm not saying this is a big thing, this is a game changer, but he does give away his entire salary. Producer Mark, can you just let the president have his say on this one? 6.
But I give away my presidential salary. They say that no other president has done it. I'm surprised, to be honest with you. They actually say that George Washington may have been the only other president to do it. But see whether or not Obama gave up his salary. See whether or not all of the other of your favorites give up their salary. The answer is no. They say it's the only one. They think George Washington did, but they say no other. So I give up. It's a lot of money, $450,000.
So for a guy that they say can be bought for the price of a diplomat buying a cheeseburger at Trump Hotel, isn't it worth noting? Isn't it worth just taking a moment to say that he does give away his salary, and he also claimed he was going to do the G7 at Doral? And there's a part of me that feels like we shouldn't even have to talk about this Doral nonsense, but it just goes to show you that everything that Trump does is a problem for these people. And then they blame us for not thinking that that must be the case. They blame us. I mean, the left will say, you must be a Trump bot. You must be someone who has become deluded by your worship of this Trump figure. And I sit around just saying, no, I'm sorry. I can't reach the degree of hysteria. I can't get as upset about everything as liberals get about everything that President Trump does. Every decision he makes, every tweet, they find a way, anything of any consequence, they find a way to make into the worst thing ever. And even Trump speaking up for Tulsi Gabbard was interesting. Play 13.
Other trade deals that we've done South Korea, which is a fantastic deal for us. Turned out even better than we thought. South Korea was a terrible deal. The person in charge of that particular deal, Hillary Clinton, if you've heard of her, she's the one that's accusing everybody of being a Russian agent. Anybody that is opposed to her is a Russian agent. So that's a scam that was pretty much put down. Tulsi, I don't know Tulsi, but she's not a Russian agent. I don't know Jill Stein. I know she likes environment. I don't think she likes Russians. If she does like them, I know she's not an asset. She called her an asset of Russia. These people are sick. There's something wrong with them. But I think that Tulsi Gabbard probably got helped quite a bit by this stir. I think we were helped because it shows for 2.5 years we end up winning. I had to go through 2.5 years. If she would have done this earlier, people would have realized what a scam it is. Everybody's a Russian or a Russian agent or a Russian asset.
I see they've still found ways to make use of some of the NeverTrumpers that are out there. The Democrats are going to do everything they can to create the kind of internal feuding and political warfare that we've seen on display with Hillary Clinton and Tulsi Gabbard and some others. You still have these should we give them any attention or not? That's always the question. Is it worth refuting their nonsense, or is it better if we just accept that they are irrelevant, that no one cares, and that we shouldn't have to deal with them in any capacity? I remember when Joe Walsh was a guy, first of all, he was a radio host, and I remember when he was really too right-wing for CNN, which doesn't say all that much, but also too inflammatory for television sometimes in what he would say about Obama. And now he is Mr. Ethics and Mr. Trump is a bad guy. Listen to me about it. Here's alleged Republican primary opponent for Trump, Joe Walsh, talking about how it's not just him. A lot of Republicans hate Trump. Play 22.
It's really important to note, though, I need to say this, Republicans don't like him. Republicans in Congress, they don't like him. They don't fear him. They don't respect him. They do believe he's incompetent. They do believe he's a moron. Everything I say about Trump publicly, the vast majority of my colleagues up on Capitol Hill, they feel the same way about him privately. They don't fear Trump, but they fear Trump's voters. I was campaigning in Iowa all weekend, and even just talking to Republican voters on the ground in Iowa, they were even bothered by this Doral thing, the G7 thing. The best that they could say was, it doesn't look good. So Republicans in Congress, they fear Trump's voters, and Trump's voters were bothered by what Trump did. That will move them.
This is analysis that no one needs to hear, really. Or perhaps it's analysis that's so obvious, why is this guy on TV or wherever he is saying it? But there are some aspects of it that I think are worthy of our attention for a moment. For example, Republicans hate Trump, he says. Well, he means Republican elected officials. And Republican elected officials, members of Congress and the GOP, are afraid of Trump's voters. Good. They should be responsive to what Republican voters want. This should not be about a club, mostly of guys, up on Capitol Hill who get to lord over the rest of us, determine what is best for the what the real party message should be, what the real aims of the party should be. They're supposed to serve the American people who voted for them. We don't put them there to be our overlords. We don't put them there to give us dictation from up on the mountaintop. We're supposed to be watching them enact policy. They're the vessels of the aspirations of conservatism and the right. They're not the wise elder statesmen that we should all just sit around and be lectured by all the time. Look, a lot of members of Congress are just not very smart and not very impressive. That's true on both sides. It's true of Republicans and Democrats. The best thing they can do is keep their promises to voters, the voters that put them there, stay as honest as they can to the platforms that got them elected. And as we know, a lot of people go to D.C. and they become swamp creatures. I just left D.C. I'm still washing some of the swamp off me. Although I was never a lobbyist or anything, but you know what I'm saying. It's very easy to want to be a part of the power set there. It's very easy to want to be a part of the club that gets to make decisions and determinations about what the future of the country is like and feel as though you are separated from a majority or perhaps the entirety of the voters who gave you that power in the first place. So that Republican members of Congress don't like Trump is irrelevant in terms of I don't care that they don't like him, but it is relevant insofar as it lets us know that they care more, many of them, about their feelings about this man than what he is doing for the Republican Party and therefore for the American people. Which brings me back to my discussion yesterday, and Trump is clearly aware of this, that there are elements within the Republican system, right, within the Republican machinery that aren't only up. It's not. They're allowed to not like. Anyone's allowed to hold whatever opinion they want about anybody. You're allowed to not like Trump. That's fine. But if you're going to be a part of the Republican Party, you should not be working actively behind the scenes to undermine the leader of that party. And I do believe there are many Republicans who are doing that. I don't know how many, and I don't know to what extent, but we're just aware of what we say. I mean, obviously, Mitt Romney is quite open about it. There are others, too, who have decided that they cannot be members of the GOP in good standing anymore. They will not work to assist this president in these key endeavors. Right? They'd rather talk about how the president tweets mean things and says mean things and isn't nice enough. And it's not just people like Joe Walsh who want to discuss that, because really what they're hoping is to create the perception among Republican lawmakers that there's enough leeway within the party faithful for some of them to maybe go along with impeachment. I don't think it'll be successful, but I do believe that is what Democrats and their media allies, or is it the media and their Democrat allies, whichever way you decide. I do think that is what's going on here. Senator Michael Bennet, for example. Michael Bennet. Play clip 15, if you would.
You have a lot of private conversations with your Republican colleagues, I know, because you work across the aisle in the Senate. I'm not going to ask you to break any confidence you would have with them, but I'm curious, are you hearing more private expressions of support for removing this president than we hear publicly from the Republican side?
I would not say privately that I'm yet hearing private expressions of support, but I am hearing private expressions of people saying they're horrified by the president's behavior, and they're horrified that he invited Ukraine to interfere in our elections. They're horrified that the White House chief of staff admitted that it was a quid pro quo.
You're horrified. You're horrified at this other guy, this other thing, and Ukraine. I mean, you just said, "Why don't we get the information on the guy?" And
Who voted for this guy? That's a question that I would like answered. And notice the sleight of hand there. He didn't say what was said on the phone call, which is the president asked Ukraine to be helpful in an ongoing, open DOJ investigation of the 2016 election interference, and also to get answers as to whether there's anything relating to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden insofar as that investigation is duly constituted and ongoing. Instead, he says, they invited election interference. You see, what you'll eventually hear, and whenever the Inspector General report, it's really actually the Durham report out of Connecticut about the origins of the Russia collusion, Russia collusion conspiracy, which is what it was. It was a true conspiracy against the president. When you hear that, you'll be told, I can almost guarantee you, that it was entirely, that whole investigation's illegitimate. And they've already laid the groundwork for that now by saying that any discussion in the open by the president or others about that investigation is election interference. Meanwhile, having a foreigner, Christopher Steele, collect foreign subsources all over the former Soviet Union, including Ukraine, and run that to our own press and through our own intelligence community to Obama administration appointees who use FISA warrants against a Trump campaign official, that's all fine. You're supposed to think that that's not a problem at all. These people are laughable in their lack of consistency, but we have to take them very seriously in their efforts to destroy and undermine this presidency. That much they have set their minds to, and unfortunately, I think they'll be far too. They are far too dedicated in this process to ever recognize the damage that they are doing to the country along the way. Here we have. Oh, I did want to get to this as well. You had Beto O'Rourke, who did get a little bit. There is such a thing as too crazy even for Democrats these days. It's rare. It doesn't happen all that often, but when it does happen, it's pretty interesting. Beto O'Rourke, who has been comparing Trump to Nazi Germany and to Goebbels, was asked about this, and here's how Beto responded. Play 16, please.
Is that not going too far to make a comparison between the president of the United States and the Nazis?
Find me a better analogy of another leader of a Western democracy describing all people of one religion as inherently defective or disqualified or dangerous. And that's what the president has done.
But you understand the criticism when you make any comparisons to the Holocaust and the Nazis that, that is simply, at least most people say that is unacceptable.
It's the comparison of last resort, and that's where we are. And I don't mean the last resort politically or the last resort in terms of defeating the president in November, but the last resort for this country that is descending into an open racism and intolerance and violence led by the president. Now, whether he said whether it's what he said about Muslims or immigrants or the way he treats women of color in this country or the fact that he described Klansmen and neo-Nazis as very fine people.
He's just a liar. He's just living in some alternate reality. The president did not describe the people at the neo-Nazis at Charlottesville as very fine people. I've read the transcript dozens of times. He did not do it. The media keeps saying it because they want to talk about a big lie and a repetition of a big lie. That is a big lie. The media keeps saying something that is demonstrably false and untrue, and they know it's untrue, but they're so desperate to make this president beyond the pale. You cannot support him without being a bad person, that they'll just lie about stuff. They will just lie. That is a lie. What Beto O'Rourke just said is a lie. I think he knows that, but he doesn't care. Also, when he says describing people of one religion as dangerous or defective, when did the president do that? When did he describe people of one religion as dangerous or defective? He's never done that. This is always, Democrats complain about what Trump says, and then they always offer us up an interpretation of what Trump says instead of the actual words. If what the president says is so bad, why don't we just hear about what the president said? Why is it always the Democrat? So in other words, remember that BBC lady with Jordan Peterson? Well, what you're really saying, in other words, no. How about just what President Trump says? But there's a desperation growing, a desperation among the Democrats because they've got to know that these candidates they have, Warren is their technocrat. Warren's the one who's supposed to lead them to the promised land of a 2020 election victory over Donald Trump. They won't pull the rug out from under Joe Biden just yet, but they're starting to get a little nervous about it. The more we look into Elizabeth Warren, the more clear it is that she is quite radical. She's not a centrist Democrat. She's a radical left of Obama even Democrat. That's going to be the unifying, independent winning, Ohio, Florida, Michigan, Pennsylvania winning candidate for the Democrats. Elizabeth Warren, the more we find out about what she really thinks and believes, a few things become clear. One is that she hasn't really even thought through the implications of some of the things she says she wants to do to transform the country. And people also now realize Bernie Sanders just had a heart attack. He's too old for this. His health is not in good enough shape for this. So there's a quiet transfer, I think, of aspirations on the left to Elizabeth Warren that has been ongoing. And the media has been warming up to her a little bit. And we're going to forget about the whole I'm 1/1024th Cherokee, so that means I'm a Native American. That was a thing that she did that no one made her do. We're going to forget about that whole thing. But we can't forget about some of the other policies and ideas that she puts out there. And I think that that's also why you have this panic among Democrats. Well, what if none of the 20 candidates we started out with can get it done against Trump? I think there are a lot of Democrats who do not think that they can psychologically handle. And I don't mean a lot like just a few prominent Democrat politicians. I mean millions of Democrats across the country would have some kind of a nervous breakdown if Trump won 4 more years in office. I think that's the level of hysteria and insanity. Someone like Beto O'Rourke talking about this is the analogy of last resort, comparing Trump to a regime that killed millions and millions of people, men, women, and children, put them in gas chambers, executed them. I mean, just the worst things, the worst crimes against humanity in history. And he's comparing that to Donald Trump? He's either a moron or a psycho. I mean, Beto, oh my gosh, why do you say such mean things? Well, because it's true. It's a bizarre thing for someone to say and someone to then double down on afterwards, but that's where Beto is.
This country, though we may not be in El Paso, Texas, is still racist at its foundation, at its core, and throughout this system. This country, though El Paso is one of the safest cities in America, is still inherently violent. 40,000 gun deaths just last year in America. No other country in the world comes even close to this kind of carnage.
40,000 gun deaths, he says. A very large number of those are actually, first of all, it's not 40,000. I don't know why he keeps saying a number that's not correct. A very large number of those are suicides, by the way. This country is still racist at its core, Beto O'Rourke says. And this is a guy who is entirely a construct of the media. He was supposed to be able to beat Ted Cruz in Texas. Remember that? More money poured into that guy, Beto O'Rourke's effort to unseat Ted Cruz in Texas than any other Senate race in history. They're just funneling money to this guy. He's entirely a construct of the elite echelon of the Democrat Party. And he just says crazy stuff. He just says things that are unfair, that are unethical, that aren't based in any objective reality. But it's also really sad. It's sad that there are so many people on the left who would rather believe that this country is an example of evil racism on the world stage instead of a country where you have tremendous diversity of religion, ethnicity, diversity of every kind. And by and large, we actually get along very well. You start to compare us to other, what's a country similar to America in its makeup that gets along so much better than we do? And where there's so much less racism? I think that Democrats always take a little too much pride in talking down to their country and downgrading their country in the way they speak about it, instead of understanding that they are so lucky to be here. We are all so lucky, we who are Americans, to be in this country at this time of relative peace and booming prosperity. And Democrats, in their just lust for power, will lie about the United States of America and come up with some way to make it sound like this country is in a state of dysfunction and despair. That is just not true. But Democrats are going to try to convince everybody that it is true for the next 12 months.